Your legacy is not your house or your money or your assets or your books, but it's actually the network that you give your children. If you slip off the pace of the market, you will starve and your family will starve, and that's not acceptable.
I welcome to our series Thomas Power. Currently is the founder and as well leading the BIP100 Club.
We decided to build a private community. We built this community of 100 business owners. We spent the last 5 years building that. The future of business is mass automation. I can see multi-billion-dollar companies run by one person. One sentence, which I've never forgotten in 38 years. All roads lead to database. People started calling me the networker. I'd never heard the phrase before.
Right now they are in the AI age, but of course the internet was a massive revolution.
Just when you think you've learned it, here comes something else. And that tremendous excitement of the tech industry. When you get under the covers of social media or social networking or SaaS or cloud or blockchain or AI, these are hard, tough, new technologies that you're really trying to get your head around to figure out what is the application of this technology, how can it be used, how can it benefit people, how will it make an impact on their lives, how will it make money. A lot of people are going to lose their livelihood, that's for sure. That always happens with new technology, but millions of new jobs are going to be created on the back of AI, millions and millions, billions. So I'm not really scared or fearful of AI. I only see opportunity there. And you can only be on the front line of the market if you're on the front line and connected to the people building it. The reason I've survived this long and continue to be on the cutting edge of everything, and not just technology, but I mean everything, is because as long as you keep up, you'll survive.
Hello and welcome to Dinis Guarda YouTube podcast show. Once again, powered by businessabc.net, intelligenthq.com, wisdomia.ai, and citiesabc.com. I've been doing this series for some time now, and one of the things that excites me is speaking with new people and with people I know, but people that have been, I would say, challenging me or making me see things in different ways. And definitely today I have one of the people that I wanted to bring for a long time that has been probably one of the most inspiring persons that I met in my career and life, but as well someone that brought a fantastic bridge between the humanity and the technology and the thought leadership, which is three things that are very difficult to bring together, and as well with a fantastic sense of humor and endurance that I would suggest everyone to become a fan like I am. So I welcome to our series Thomas Power. Thomas Power is a friend, and I would say I am a huge fan of him, but he's actually someone you cannot put in a box, and I'll do a small introduction before we start talking. He's an entrepreneur, thought leader, a mentor, a board member, I would say as well a disruptor, a digital strategist, a social media before social media, and a creator. And he's been specialized in business innovation for all his career. He's as well a family man. I think that is an important thing to highlight here, and I respect that a lot. He's a digital strategist that has been looking at integration from the internet to social media to blockchain to artificial intelligence and to be best business practices, especially ecosystems of business online and offline. So Thomas Power currently is the founder and as well leading the BIP100 Club. That is an intimate, exclusive community designed for business owners to foster deep personal and professional connections. And over the years, Thomas has connected with hundreds of thousands of professionals, but directly probably 100,000 people that he actually probably met face-to-face know him. And he's been selected for this community, 250 experts that joined this club. The BIP100 Club has been hosting events on a monthly basis, and it creates a huge ecosystem between the different parts. So much more about Thomas. So Thomas was the mentor of emerging superstars like Jay Shetty. And when I say mentor, is someone that really helped him become who he was. He's been the advocate of ORS, Open Random Supportive Frameworks in Business and Cultural Transformation. He's a board member of AI, blockchain, and Bitcoin at different organizations, been providing a lot of business strategies and ecosystems. Has been a board member of companies like Genius Group Limited and contributing to AI-powered education. And one of their achievements in his career was to create probably one of the first social networks in the world, the Academy, with his wife. There was the first social network for small businesses and engaging 650,000 members. This by far, I know for people listening to us, this was before LinkedIn, and we're going to talk about that, of course. Some of the senior roles that he had was social media business strategies for Microsoft. He as well had board positions in companies like QXL, Ricardo PLC, BT Group, and a lot of startups around the world. And it's been as well involved in multiple ventures, including serving as director of several organizations such as Savortex, Digital Entrepreneur, and Bikra. And of course, part of his work, that is one of the things that I suggest, is his work as a thought leader, as a speaker, as a keynote in several conferences, from TEDx events, discussing the future of work, future of social networks, of blockchain, and AI. And is as well an early adopter that keeps a young mind and a young spirit, especially in anything related with AI, blockchain, SaaS, social media, and digital transformation. So I think this is just a summary, but highlights is a human. And I think especially I'm very excited to have him here. And I would just highlight probably as a final, he has an honors in business, finance, and marketing from Croydon College, and the O levels and A levels from St. Andrews, our C leader head. And lastly, has been working with the Blockchain Industry Compliance and Regulation Association and helping business navigate blockchain compliance and regulation. So the list goes, but I think these highlights, and I'm very excited to welcome for the first time actually in this channel, Thomas Power.
Yes, thank you. That was a 7-minute introduction.
Well, for you, I think it has to be, because I think would be probably, I think for people that know you, they know a bit of this, but probably they don't remember all the achievements. So I wanted to highlight and not forget this.
You know, it's funny, I'm 61 now, and I've been working since I was 16. So I've been working for 45 years. So it makes sense that I've done all these things in 45 years. But I still remember my very first role at 16 back in 1980. And you never know where your life is going to take you. But the ironic thing is my love of networking and community building and connecting people and talking to people and finding the right connections, it actually all begun in a supermarket on a delicatessen in Waitrose back in Dorking in 1980. That's where I discovered it as a skill. But I didn't have a label for it then. And it wasn't really until the early 90s, sort of late 80s, early 90s, people started calling me the networker. Go and meet that guy, Thomas Power. He's a networker. And I used to say, oh, I'm a networker. Am I a networker? I'd never heard the phrase before. And so I enjoy the label of being the networker or a networker. But thank you for a very generous introduction. Very generous.
Well, no, I think it's, I am very thankful to have you here. So Thomas, let's go back to that base. So you said 16 years old, your first job, and the networker. So how did all that started? It was family, it was passion, was you wanting to talk with people. Let's start by that early starts.
You know, the very, very first thing I remember, I mean, I remember all the way back to being age 4, but the very first thing I remember at school, at the secondary school, not at the junior school, but that the teachers used to ask me for the students' names. They used to ask me, what's his name, what's her name, what's his name, what's her name. And I didn't understand why they used to ask me the names when they were the teachers. But I could easily remember 750 names of the students at school. And I didn't think it was a big deal that I could remember everyone's name, and I knew everyone's name. And I knew everyone in the school, from the lowest to the highest, from the first year through to the 6th year. And that's, no one ever said to me, oh, you've got a good memory, or you're autistic, or you've got an autistic memory, or whatever it might be called, whatever it might be labeled now. Because that would have encouraged me more. But then when I went from school into my first job in a supermarket, and I was serving cheese and salami and ham and beef and cheesecake and coleslaw to all these people in Dorking in Surrey, I discovered that I could remember their names and their orders in my head without writing anything down. It's easy to remember. And there's probably about 1,000 people you serve in the supermarket each week. But I knew their names, and I knew the ham they wanted, the salami they wanted, the cheesecake they wanted, and the cheese they wanted. I knew it all in my head. I only had to see their face and I knew. But I didn't know that autistic brain for labeling things, people and data, basically people and data, or labeling data to people, was a skill that would serve me my whole life in my networking career. I just thought, well, I can remember everyone's name, so it makes sense that people ask me what everyone's name is. As time went on, I realized that was a skill, that was an art form, which, being autistic, having a very good memory, being able to label things and having this very powerful memory, associative memory of linking things together, as I say, has served me all my life. But I didn't know it was a gift, because all of these things now we refer to as superpowers: ADHD, Asperger's, autistic, all these things with that Elon Musk has. Many of these that we always labeled disabilities, but now they're labeled superpowers. So I don't know whether they're disabilities or superpowers, but many of these things that are now labeled I had as a child, but I didn't know they were gifts until my career developed and I learned how to remember things. And I can remember things in a great detail 30, 40, 50 years ago, a lot of detail, even now. And it was only when I went to work for Alan Sugar, or Sir Alan, or now Lord Sugar, back in 1986, and I found somebody with a fantastic memory. And Alan has an incredible memory, like a video detail YouTube memory. He can remember what he said to every person, every meeting, in precise detail, and play that video back. And he didn't write anything down. And it was the first time I saw anybody with a phenomenal memory similar to my own. His was more like a video memory. Mine was more of a tagging, associative memory. And then in 1987, when I met Michael Dell, and Michael and Alan met, and it was the first time I sort of met Michael Dell and Alan Sugar and sort of connected them together. It's like that introductory process. Back in the summer of 1987, in June at the PC User Show, and I met Michael Dell, and I was working for Alan Sugar. I met two people with these incredible memories. Now, Michael Dell back then was only 21, I was 22, but his vision and his memory was incomparable. And so I realized then in my early 20s that having a memory was a powerful part of being a successful business leader. But what I hadn't linked was the importance of the memory, the tagging, and the networking together. I hadn't put them together. And it was only really the encouragement of Alan Sugar pushing me to gather information for him on the market. Don't come back in my office until you've got more information than me. It's a hell of a challenge when you've only got a telephone, a Yellow Pages, and a company car, a little Vauxhall Astra. And so I was developing these skills of memory, of networking, of talking, of researching, of reconnaissance, of finding things out, of gathering information, of intelligence, if you like, without a label for them. I didn't know 10 years later I would be called the networker, or a networker, or a networking expert, or networking guru. So now we can label all these things. They're much easier to understand and implement. But back then you were just feeling in the dark. But all of these foundations, from school, from Waitrose to working for Alan, and all the different people I worked with on the way. And you mentioned Jay Shetty. I'm one of Jay Shetty's mentors, but I had a big influence on him, that's true. He had a big influence on me, and now he coaches my 3 children, which is glorious. He mentors Hannah, Ross, and TJ, which is lovely, in different ways. But if you speak to Jay now, he has 9 mentors, of which I'm one. And so he has 9 mentors mentoring him, and obviously he's flourishing, and 100 million people have now downloaded his podcast. He's had 4 billion people watch his videos on YouTube. So, but I taught him a formula very young, and he just followed the recipe, and he works very, very hard. So just wanted to reference that because you mentioned it in your introduction. I had a big influence on him, but there's another 8 people really influencing him as well.
There's always the sum of the parts, but that's another wonderful thing. I know that you are probably one of the most important ones, and actually using his own words about you is, simply put, Thomas, can transform your career. he has the unique ability to help anyone realize their true potential and help them achieve it. And this is one of the things I feel that is one of your superpowers. So from this early stage of, first of all, the memory, the capacity to connect people and network with people, how did you start building your career? You mentioned Alan Sugar, you mentioned Michael Dell, of course, two icons. One of them, of course, still Michael Dell is still actually one of the most influential people in tech in history, and still very effective. He's still on his 60s and right now very dynamic. But I would like to hear from this beginning on the supermarket to this memory, then going and working for someone like Sir Alan Sugar and meeting all these different people and connecting these people. How did you build your career, at least your initial of your career?
I learned a lot of different things very young. So I knew there was something in the memory thing and the connecting people thing very young. When I was studying at Croydon College, at the tech college there, business and finance and marketing, a guy came in called Rodney Cox. This is back in 1984. He was from Symbiotic Computer Systems. And he came in and he talked about assembling hard disks to plug into Apple Macs, Apple IIes. And he said, the first person to come up to me at the end of my presentation, I'll give him a job in the factory assembling hard disks, Winchester hard drives. So I thought, well, I'm going to do that. I'm going to be first. So I sat in the front row and I was first. And my friend Nigel was second. And he still runs an Apple dealership to this day from that one moment. So I learned how to assemble hard disks in a factory back in Croydon in the mid 1980s. So I got the sort of the understanding of the build, and then through Rodney and his team, one of his guys in there, Terry Hood, who was the sales director, I bought an Apple IIe. I plugged in my hard drive. I learned how it all worked. I learned all the software, and I learned the innards of computing, programming, software. At the same time at Croydon College, I was invited to teach the students below me. I was only 1 year ahead. I was invited to teach them basic programming because the teacher got pregnant and she had to go off and have a baby. And they needed me to fill in for 3 months. And they said, can you fill in and teach the class below you programming? I know you only learnt it last year, but you seem to know what it's about. So I learned how to teach programming by working with the students and realized I didn't actually need to teach them. I could get the students who knew it better than me to teach them. So then I learned about teaching and working with other people to teach. So I learned the teaching thing. I learned the technical thing. Then I got a job in a marketing agency with a lovely guy, Peter Allen, one of my lifetime mentors who's no longer with us, who taught me the advertising business, the marketing business, the creative business, TV business, video business. So I learned the marketing side of business. And I've learned all of this by my early 20s. And I'd done a massive amount of networking. I'd set up the Croydon Young Chamber of Commerce with Mike Rabo. And, when I think back at it, I didn't realize how much I was doing, but I was just obsessed with working and learning and networking and listening and so on. Then I managed to find my way in front of Alan Sugar and get a job there at Amstrad back in 1986. I learned the PC business, the retail business, the distribution business, both in the United States and in Korea and Hong Kong. And so then I met Michael Dell. And then a very significant thing happened. Tony Code and John Moore came in to see me at Amstrad in 1987. They were from a company called NDL, which was a database marketing company. And they said this sentence to me. They said, all roads lead to database. And this sentence just hit me. Sort of knocked me over. All roads lead to database. All roads lead to database. What does that mean, that sentence? And I subsequently seen Tony and John and said how significant that sentence was to me. Because that one sentence really changed my life. Because then I became obsessed with databases. I learned Data Ease and Ashton Tate and you may remember ACT for DOS 1.0. I learned all about databases, and that was my introduction, if you like, to CRM, to direct marketing, telemarketing, call centers. And then I set up a business with Mike Raybone to be the call center for the dealers for Amstrad, for Alan. So effectively, Amstrad became a first customer. And then we built on that with HP and Microsoft, and I got into all the tech companies. And then we sold that business to an American software company in 1982 called Urban Science, who wanted a tech call center in Europe. And then I learned that they were a retail network planning business, planning dealer locations for car dealers across the United States. They were building up in Europe, and they wanted some more expertise. I joined them, and I learned retail network planning and the importance of convenience. And I built that product up with David Svensson and Neil Holloway and Sean Orban at Microsoft. And we got an audience with Steve Ballmer. So then I met Steve Ballmer at Microsoft and showed him these opportunity maps to fill market share and beat Ashton Tate and Lotus and so on back in the 90s. And so, this is back when Microsoft was a small company, right? Everyone thinks of it now as a giant, but it wasn't. And so having had all this experience, and then when in 1994 I met Ajaz Ahmed who built AKQA, and we met him when he was 19. He went on to sell that company to Martin Sorrell at WPP for $500 million 20 years later. And it was Ajaz who introduced me to the internet, to the IP address back in 1994. Up until then, I was just using BT Telecom Gold, and I was using AOL, and I was using CompuServe, and I wasn't really hooked on it until Ajaz got me hooked. And that led us in. We created an internet auction then for Mercedes-Benz, for Alexander Weisslieder at Mercedes-Benz Davis. And then we sold that for a couple of £1 million back then in 1995, a real-time internet auction over the IP address. 1995. This is even before eBay had started. And then I flew out to California to meet Jerry Kaplan, who built onsale.com. That became auction.com. That went on to become a huge, and was the founding part of what was QXL with Tim Jackson. And then I 10 years later, became a board member of QXL. So everything was intertwined. And Penny, I'd met again, networking. I met my wife through networking through Aldous PageMaker. Moira Craig, the marketing director, introduced me to Penny, fell in love with Penny in 1988, got married in 1990. Penny was observing my life of constantly meeting new people, constantly meeting new things, constantly learning new things, and ringing all the time. People coming round to the house having pasta. I want this contact. I'm looking for this contact. I want this job. I'm looking for this opportunity. And it was constant every day. And she was constantly cooking pasta, and for people knocking on the front door saying, "Can I ask Thomas about this? Can I ask Thomas about it?" So I was always sort of a database of people, a database of humans, all in my head and on Act for DOS and Act for Windows later on my laptop. And then this had gone on. I pretty much met every .com founder in the 90s. I met pretty much every founder of every .com from the mid-90s. And any big name, I've met them personally face to face. Certainly across the West Coast and East Coast of the United States. Then Penny conceived the idea, why don't we build a social network for all these small businesses that need support in learning about e-commerce and procurement and all the education required and training to actually keep up with the corporates. And that was that sort of e-commerce education thing, e-commerce academy. And eCademy was born in 1998, 4 years before LinkedIn, 6 years before Facebook, 8 years before Twitter. And it was a combination of LinkedIn and Facebook and Twitter all in one. It was social, it was business, it had a microblog, 650,000 members. Members paid £2 a month, £10 a month, £100 a month, sort of bronze, silver, gold. We worked like dogs, built it up to 650,000 members, sold it to a big insurance company. Penny got her OBE from the Queen. It was a real exciting time, but incredibly challenging. But it was the first time I was able to put all of my talent into a box known as eCademy, running on Drupal. And so if you think about that, from 1980 to say 1998, took 18 years to take all my intellectual property and push it into a box and put it in a database, a content management system called Drupal that Glenn and Julian built, the most phenomenal platform. I still think the platform they built is better than LinkedIn, Facebook, and Twitter. Even now, back then, it's better. But we couldn't compete with their venture capital. Had billions of dollars of backing. We were using credit cards and subscriptions, and you eventually they beat you into the ground. And we had many offers to sell that business, and we never know whether we made the right decision to not sell it earlier than we did. But that inside the connectedness of this huge audience inside eCademy came so many opportunities. And I realized networks were so powerful because I got loads of non-executive director, board seats, loads of speaking, loads of conferences, hundreds of events, thousands of people, loads of recommendations. I realized having a network, having a database or a network around you in your life was critical to your your growth and career. And I'd always known it, but I'd never seen it captured in a box. And so the Academy created a huge number of opportunities, brand reputation. And I think that reputation that it built stayed with us for the last 25 years. It's never left us. And when Penny got the OBE from the Queen, it was kind of a recognition of the work, because it was an award for digital contribution to the United Kingdom. And it was great to receive such an award. And from the Queen is, even better to go and stand in a room and get an award like that. As a result of all of that, we wrote many books about networking, about community building, and discovered that Penny is really the community builder and I'm the networker, and networking and community building are different. One is about birth and connection. One is about nurture and retention. And we continue to speak at lots of conferences, join boards, become non-executive directors. And I think I've now done 17 non-executive director roles in America, in the UK, in New Zealand, and in Australia. And then really, we weren't planning to ever do a community build again, because they're so hard to build communities. Then really it was at the start of COVID when Boris told us we all had to stay at home. Our daughter Hannah came round. They were all locked down in different places. And she said, "Mum, Dad, this is a time to build another community. Why don't we build another community?" And Penny had written the book Business is Personal. I got bowel cancer in 2018. She'd written that book because it was sort of capturing like a memoir, if you like, of everything we'd been through, both the good and the bad, and the trolls. You mentioned that earlier. The trolls are terrible when you become famous in a social network. Horrendous. We decided to build a private community, not a public one, a private one, with everyone interviewed, everyone vetted. So we built this community of 100 business owners in London and Surrey, and we spent the last 5 years building that, and really love doing it. But it's just a little tiny group of 100 people, not the giant thing we built before. And it's very personal. It's very intimate. It's very special. It's very kind. It's very generous. It's very us, but it's tiny. So we've gone from being a big somebody, front page of the newspapers, awards from the Queen, to little tiny secret, invisible community. But we've applied all our career skills to this process of networking and community building and memory hunting. And still to this day, I think back to the time at Waitrose, remembering what ham and salami and cheesecake and cheese and that people wanted. I'm still like that now, with everybody among these 100 members, with people like you. I do remember an awful lot about who people are and what they want. I just have this memory. So I'm able to contextualize my questions and my data to each person very precisely. Even if I only see them once every 10 years, I know exactly what we spoke about the last time. I don't know why, but Alan Sugar has this, Michael Dell has this, Steve Ballmer certainly has it. I spend a lot of time with Steve. So it's just a gift, I think. And then a couple of weeks ago, my son Ross, who's in Bali, he's working out in Bali, building an AI business. And he works also for the Genius Group for Roger Hamilton out there, where I'm a board member. He sent me a note saying, "Dad, the best thing you ever gave me in my life was not my education, it was not my car, but it was the gift of a network. You gave me this network, and this gift of a network is worth so much more than my education and everything you've invested in my life. But the network you've given me, the contacts I give him in Bali, Australia, New Zealand, America, Europe, wherever they are in the world. I've networked in 60 countries. The network is there and alive and kicking. It's always there. It's been there for 30 years. It's still there. I can tap into it any time. Everyone connected with everyone on WhatsApp. I get about 1,000 messages a day on WhatsApp every day, asking me questions and connections, and I answer them all. But my son Ross said that it's the gift of a network is the greatest thing you've passed on to me. Is your legacy, the network of contacts of your friends around the world, is your legacy. And if I stuck my 3 children in front of you and I was no longer here and dead, you would treat them just the same way you treated me, and you would connect them to your children and your network and your connections and your family. And you would think of that. You would do that anyway, naturally, even without thinking about it, even without me asking. So I'm very fascinated now that your legacy is not your house or your money or your assets. or your books, but it's actually the network that you give your children that's worth the most to them. So it's got me really thinking about that concept. And that only came up a couple of months ago. That's a long answer to your question, but there it all.
Well, that is a wonderful one. And I let you speak because you pass part of your life and achievement. So from the early roots and formation to the digital pioneering, and I want to touch Academy for the people that don't know. But first of all, let's look at, we talk about the early roots, but let's look at the digital pioneering, because you touch your work with all these big players from Microsoft, BT Group. So I want just, because of course my audience is between 20s to 40s, and a lot of young people that of course right now they are in the AI, as we speak, AI age. But of course the internet was a massive revolution. And of course you were in the UK, but even in the UK, you touch between the difference between the UK and the US. And of course, that's why the US took over the world economy, especially when it came to the internet early stage. And now China probably is there, but in a more closed environment. So a bit of this digital pioneering and impact that you had that I would like to hear, especially for before internet, and as well being one of the people building and as well sharing with a lot of people that build the internet we speak today. You mentioned Microsoft and Dell, but there's a lot of other people.
Yeah, I mean, that's a big question you're asking.
It is, but you're the best person to answer.
I mean, I like to think I've played a part, at least. I've contributed a part to the development of social networking, particularly social business networking. Contributed a lot to social media and the development of social media, and then the blockchain. Contributed a lot to that, and now contributing a lot to AI. I've always been not missing out cloud and SaaS, which are, were very big at the time, relatively speaking, not as big as those. But I like to think I've been a pioneer in all of these breakthroughs, made a contribution in all of these different technologies being established. I think when you're aging your audience at 20 to 40, you don't know when you're that age what you're doing, in the sense of you don't know what the technology is going to become, but you know it's important. So you learn and you study and you network and you read and you try and get underneath the subject. I'm a historian by trade, so I know how important history is. And in many ways, history repeats itself in a different form. It's not exactly the same, but I always say history rhymes. And it does rhyme. But you still have to know what that means. And so when you get under the covers of social media or social networking or SaaS or cloud or blockchain or AI, these are hard, tough, new technologies that you're really trying to get your head around to figure out, what is the application of this technology? How can it be used? How can it benefit people? How will it make an impact on their lives? How will it make money? How will it be financed? How will it be built? And so I've been in that position both as a pioneer and as a board member, supporting others, raising capital and developing their ideas. And you on the one hand, you have this thrill and excitement of this new. It's so new. I've got to study it. It's so new. And then you have this trauma of, God, isn't it hard to build? It needs so much money and so many skills to build. So you've got this excitement on one side and this trauma on the other, this sort of pleasure and this pain at the same time. But I think the reason I've survived at the front of the market for 40 years, now that I'm a tech veteran at 61, I'm technically a digital fossil. They'll be making oil out of me next. The reason I've survived this long and continue to be on the cutting edge of everything, and not just technology, but I mean everything, is because I get my energy from being at the cutting edge, from reading and studying and learning. And, still even get replies on Twitter from Elon Musk. And not many people can achieve that. But, him being, if you like, the leading cutting edge guy in the world in terms of monetizing capital on the back of technology. But I think by keeping yourself right on the front, right on the cutting edge, you discover where the opportunities are, where the impact is, where the margin is, where the opportunity to build a balance sheet, raise capital, hire people, where it all sits. And you can only do that if you're on the real front line of the market. And you can only be on the front line of the market if you're on the front line and connected to the people building it, and you're networking with the people building it. Whether it's the scientists, the engineers, the artists, the entrepreneurs, the investors, the venture capital. You have to be on the front line edge where all the ideas are happening. And that's how you stay at the cutting edge. And provided for all of your younger listeners, your younger viewers listening here, provided they have that desire to be on the edge, then they'll keep up. And as long as you keep up, you'll survive. And even with AI, this thing about AI is going to put everyone out of work and everything's done by a machine and we don't need any lawyers or we don't need any accountants. It's all nonsense. A lot of people are going to lose their livelihood. That's for sure. That always happens with new technology. But millions of new jobs are going to be created on the back of AI. Millions and millions, billions. So I'm not really scared or fearful of AI. I only see opportunity there. But the critical thing is you've got to keep yourself on the front line edge of where it's all going. Not just with the engineers who are building it, but with the capital following it, the VCs, the money people, and the people who are using it and applying it. You've got to know all of it to see where the opportunities reside. And then you've got to actually see, is it making a difference? Is it making a real impact on people? Is it changing their lives? As we've witnessed with ChatGPT, it's actually making a real difference on people's lives. But then we have Google Gemini, and we have Grok, we have Claude, and we have a dozen of these, DeepSeek, Quen, and Manus. We have a dozen of these applications, these AI applications now. And they're very similar to a dozen search engines we had back in 1995. With Excite and Lycos and AltaVista and Yahoo. And we had all these search engines. It's very, very similar. 1995, 2025, incredibly similar. Similar investors, similar kinds of engineers, similar approach. Are we going to end up with a situation where only one wins? And you mentioned China in your introduction. And, AI is something that everybody wants to win. The Europeans want to win. The Chinese want to win. The Indians want to win. The Americans. The people who are going to win is humanity. Humans are going to win. And there's going to be, I think, a lot of choice and a lot of niches, and those niches are yet to form. But I still pride myself, in terms of your question about digital pioneering, is always be a pioneer near the front. And if you're near the front of the network, if you're right at the beginning of the conversations, if you know who's doing what where, you'll listen your way into a new market. You'll listen your way into a new opportunity. And in terms of Penny and I, we bring people with us. So we've got 100 business owners in London and Surrey who are on the train with us. So we're teaching them social networking, teaching them social media, teaching them blockchain or Bitcoin investments, teaching them AI. They're all coming with us. So we've got a gang coming with us right on that cutting edge who are helping us get there. And that's all part of the pioneering, because it's like crossing the 49th parallel in the United States. We're crossing with horses and carts, and we're trying to find California, and we're trying to find what's there. It's no different, that metaphor, to now. But you've got to bring people with you, and you've got to stay right on the edge to have any chance of surviving, because markets are brutal, absolutely brutal. I've been on the end of them very successfully and disastrously as well. You have to, you learn the most in business when you lose money, particularly your own money. When you lose a lot, then you know for sure. I don't think you learn a great deal from success, to tell you the truth. I remember Michael Dell saying that to me. You don't learn much from success. You only learn from error and mistakes. But I think provided people stay on the front line of the knowledge, which right now is X or X.AI, as now that X.AI has taken over Twitter, or X. Very clever takeover last weekend. I was expecting that. So what was Twitter became X, and what was X is going to become X.AI. So X.AI, which will be Grok, will be competing with ChatGPT and Claude and Anthropic and Perplexity and Gemini and ChatGPT. We're going to see all of that battle. But provided you're right on the edge of using all of these tools and you're seeing the benefit, you'll be fine. But if you're aged 20 to 40, do not slip off the pace of the market. It's too high risk. If you slip off the pace of the market and you're not networking with the right people, you're not getting to the right conferences and events, you will starve and your family will starve. And that's not acceptable. You've got to feed your family. And that, if you want to feed your family, you've got to be right on the cutting edge of the market all the time. And the market never rests. It's flying along all the time. Long answer
Yes.
to your question.
No, it's a fantastic what you touch and the importance. So there's still a lot of questions I want to have with you. So first of all, the academy. And the academy, you started in 1998. So for people that never heard about the academy, and you touch a bit of the history, but just how it was, how it started in a very simple way, for people to understand the importance as well. You mentioned the number of users you had, because this, like you said, was before LinkedIn. I think it's a very interesting case study from the early stages of the internet that you just made a parallel with the AI world.
Yes, I mean, building academy was incredibly hard. But if I take you back to 1998, we had the idea was connecting business people for learning, for networking, and for career development. That was our tagline. So social business networking for learning, networking, and career development. And to kick it off the ground, we didn't have lots of capital. We only had our savings. We weren't backed by a VC, but we had people who believed in the idea of a community, the idea of a network, and people knew they needed education, particularly around e-commerce. So we rented the bar, the brasserie at the IOD, and we invited everyone we knew for a drink. We bought about 10 bottles of Chardonnay, and we gave everybody a drink. And Penny stood on a chair. We were downstairs at the brasserie at the IOD in Pall Mall. And she said, we're going to build this network. We're going to build this community. It's all about education, training, networking, learning all about e-commerce and e-business as it became known. And we won't always be able to buy everyone a drink, but tonight we're buying everyone a drink and a sausage roll. And next month, we'd like you to all bring one friend. Bring a friend. And that's what she said. Just bring a friend. Bring one friend. And the following month, we did the same thing. And the 27 became 54. And then the 54 became 108. And the 108 became 216. And the 216 became... And so it went on. Within a year, we had about 1,000 people coming. And we had to rent the Hilton Hotel in Park Lane because we had 1,000 people coming for networking, to learn about e-commerce and networking. Now, at the same time, you've got to remember we were riding on the back of the .com hype. There was First Tuesday with Julie Meyer, still a very good friend of ours. There were lots of different types of networks forming, lots of meetups forming. And so everybody was going to the meetups thinking, I've got to get on the .com lottery ticket wagon. I've got to find the right .com. I've got to find my lottery ticket for .com. And get my shareholding in whichever .com is the one that's going to make it. Of course, none of us knew. It was just a guess. But we were caught up in a market going into hype in 98, 99, 2000. Obviously, in 2000, that hype collapsed and we have the .com crash, which really lasted from 2000 to 2002 before it lifted again. But we had a 3 or 4 year period from 98 of hundreds and hundreds of events, thousands of bottles of Chardonnay, hundreds of events across London and the Southeast. Every bar, every restaurant, every pub. We ran hundreds and hundreds of events. By 2002, we had a database of about 10,000 active members. And Glenn, our CEO, said, we've got to figure out how to charge people for membership. And he introduced us to this guy called Julian Bond, who showed us this thing called Drupal, Drupal.org, this content management system 1.0, Drupal 1.0.org. Never heard of it. And Julian said to us, do you know what a blog is? No. Do you know what a group is? No. Do you know what an online community is? No. Penny and I didn't know any of these things. And he said, well, look, pay me and I'll build you one with Glenn. And we'll charge people £10 a month to use it. And we'll see if anybody in the 10,000 wants to join. And so they spent about 6 months building this thing. We thought it was brilliant when they put it up. It was so basic, but we thought it was brilliant at the time. And it was a community, and it was a marketplace, and it was a blog. You know, it looked like a combination of Twitter, LinkedIn, and Facebook. Now it looked like all of them cobbled together in a cocktail. And I remember December the 7th, 2002, we agreed a payment mechanism with WorldPay connected to the Royal Bank of Scotland. And we said to people, it's £10 a month. And in that first month, and it was effectively, we were charging for a SaaS. I mean, it says SaaS was launched in 2006 in Wikipedia. We launched a SaaS on December the 7th, 2002. Arguably the world's first SaaS for £10 a month to be part of this community CRM networking club. But basically, people were paying for membership, but they were getting software. So it it was a SaaS, it was a community, it was all of the above. And in that first month in December, 36 people bought a £10 a month subscription, and we were over the moon. And so I said to Glenn, what do you want me to do now that people are going to start buying this membership? And he said, what I want you to do is I want you to meet everyone who buys a subscription. So I took a membership at the IOD in Pall Mall, the Institute of Directors, and I sat the IOD from Monday morning at 8 o'clock till Friday night at 8 o'clock. And I met every single member who paid face-to-face for 1 hour, from 8 in the morning to 8 o'clock at night, 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. And I met 1,000 people a year for 3 years. And we had 3,000 subscribers, 1,000 in year one, 2,000 in year two. So by 2004, we had 3,000 paying subscribers, and I'd met every single one. I'd done 3,000 one-to-ones and taught people how to use this Drupal system, which was incredibly complicated, but I learned it inside out. And so that's really how it was born. It was born through a Chardonnay, through events, through networking, through Drupal, through Glenn and Julian's genius, and through thousands and thousands of one-to-ones at the IOD.
But this story is amazing because you create probably the first SaaS model in the world, one of the first social networks, and this was offline, and then online came afterwards, and then just a bit of history, because I think it's a great case study for a lot of the AI startups striving and a lot of other things. But how did it go from that network of people to become as well a technology platform, and as well to the 650,000 people that you had afterwards?
I think really that the breakthrough came in the software releases in 2003 and 2004, because Drupal itself, the CEO of Drupal is a Belgian guy. He's a lovely guy. And that went on to become a $1 billion business as well, Drupal itself. But he did new version releases in 2003, 2004, which allowed Julian and Glenn to build a very successful blog that looks like Twitter, just like Twitter does now. They built very successful groups, so you could start the Farnham Academy or the Sydney Academy, the Brisbane Academy, the New York Academy. And they built a very successful marketplace where you could put listings in of what you were trying to achieve. So you had listings, you had a marketplace, you had a blog, you had the chat, and you had the groups and the territories, and you could book your own events. And once people could start their own events in their own cities, in a bar, in a curry house, in a restaurant, in all cities around the world, it quickly grew. By the end of 2004, there must have been close to 5,000 groups, and the people had started those groups in their own cities, and then they were inviting people to come along and take part in their networking group, and there were networking groups all over the world. So I made a decision in 2004 to get on a plane and go and visit them all. And Penny took over the leadership of Academy in 2004, and I just lived on a plane flying around the world, going to, well, you name it. I've been to 60 countries, I've been to 1,000 cities. I went and met them all. And the amazing thing was they used to pick me up at the airport, which is why I wrote the book A Friend in Every City, because whenever I got to the airport, I got picked up by an Academy member and driven to their home, and they put me up in their home. We didn't have the capital to invest in hotels and marketing. So I just went round and met every member in 60 countries. And what happened was member, get member, get member, get member, get member. And then in 2004, we discovered this application, like an invite application out of Singapore. Can't remember the name of it now. But Mark Zuckerberg subsequently bought it and closed it down when he was building Facebook, which is interesting in itself. But it allowed you to invite all your friends on Outlook to join Academy. And we embedded it in Drupal and then gave it to everyone on Academy and said, invite all your friends to join. And the more friends you get to join, the better. And we went from 10,000 members to 100,000 members in 2005, and then 650,000 members. So we went from 10,000 to 100,000 to 500,000 in like 24 months because of the physical events, the in-person events, combined with all the training, combined with the online groups, combined with this invitation system I remember Mark Zuckerberg buying that and closing it down when he wanted to shut down all the competitors. Because people don't know the history of how Mark Zuckerberg destroyed all the other competitors in the market. by buying the assets and closing them down. Not a lot of people know the history of that. I know all of that because I know the people he did it to. It was very clever the way every other competitor was eliminated, literally eliminated, either bought or closed or destroyed over a period of time.
It's interesting, this history. So I know on the scope of time, and this is very exciting because there's a master class in terms of the beginning of the internet, and like you said, even understanding the beginning of Drupal, beginning of putting together a social network, because at the time it was MySpace and Facebook was starting. So from that history, you created, of course, the platform and as well the group that was led by your wife. This as well, a family business. So a bit of that touch of you and your wife working together to build Academy and growing to that big part. And as well, one thing I want to touch, and I think this is an important question, because although in the UK, I would say probably after the US, it's probably the country that has a bit more of technology dynamic around the world, with the exception of China and probably some countries in Asia. But still, it's not what it is. And as well, probably only with UK Tech Nation, things happened, which was only in 2014, 2011, 2014. That was the Tech Nation that pushed the UK ecosystem. But the UK was most well known by the media and the financial part. So a bit of that history, because you said as well, you had the struggles not to have funding. I would like to touch that because I think it's an important part as well to share, or whatever you want to share, but as well to understand where the space we are now, which is much more global than it was at the time.
Yes, well, I mean, with the Academy, we had attempted an IPO on the AIM stock market in March 2000, the year 2000, but the last IPO that got away was Brent and Martha with lastminute.com in early March 2000. But the market collapsed after that, and our IPO was March the 18th, and literally we missed it by 5 days, and we put a lot of money into getting ready for that IPO. So we then really had to build without resources, figure out how to do subscriptions, figure out how to raise advertising, and finance a lot of it by selling books and making conference speeches and doing training courses and so on. So we used every mechanism possible to generate revenue to survive. But Penny really took over the leadership role in 2004. So we were 6 years in at that time. And I think Penny is she's a lot more organized than me, a lot more disciplined. I'm a hunter. I like to be out at the front hunting the information. She's very much a finance and operations operator, customer service, very good at finance, very good at operations, very good at customer service. And that was her background. She was in the computer distribution business with the Hewlett-Packard distributors. So she knows the Hewlett-Packard way, and she put in that discipline into the team. And Glenn, our CEO, is also a phenomenal operator at building the platform. And so I think working together with Penny, we've been working together now for a long, long time. We know each other's attributes and we know each other's weaknesses, and we focus on doing the things we're good at and outsourcing the things we're bad at. As Roger Hamilton says, just do your flame, outsource your wax, because your wax is somebody else's flame. So just make sure you outsource your wax and focus on your flame. And I've always liked that. In terms of fundraising, it was always very hard in the UK. We managed to raise a couple of $1 million to fund Academy from various different people, but it's always very, very hard in the UK. You know, when Mark Zuckerberg raised $2.5 billion for Facebook, you know, we realized the clock was running down. And Reid Hoffman was a member of Academy for 2 years before he even launched LinkedIn. So we knew what he was doing inside LinkedIn, and an OpenBC that became Zing or CrossZing in Germany with Bill and Lars, who built Zing and exited that to a publishing company. But your point about family, you got to remember for our children, they grew up inside Academy. They were tiny children when we started. You know, TJ was 1, Ross was 4, and Hannah was 6. So they've been brainwashed for 30 years in networking and community building. So it's not surprising what they do now is related to that core. And all three of them have very successful businesses in different niches. But the heart of everything they do is is education, training, networking, and community fields. In everything that they do, you can't help it. I didn't really realize the extent of that brainwashing until I see now how successful the three of them are, using all the techniques that they've learned from mum and dad and everything they've learned on top through their own skills, education, and going to schools. Your point about the UK and the market really waking up in 2011 and 2014 with Tech Nation. UK is a slow follower. UK investors do not like technology. They never have liked technology. UK investors like roads and bridges and electricity and fiber cables. UK doesn't like SaaS or software tech. Look at the experience that Mike Lynch went through with autonomy and Hewlett Packard. And Mike Lynch, who obviously left us when his boat went down in the Mediterranean a couple of years ago. He's one of our first speakers at Academy. Mike was former professor at Cambridge. But, he found it incredibly difficult raising capital. It's always been very difficult raising capital in the UK. And even with AI now, it's still difficult. British investors do not like technology. We don't have a success story. We don't really have a .com success story we can point at and say that came out of Britain. Not on a mega scale. Yes, we have a few who've maybe got to $1 billion, but we don't have a multi-billion-dollar success story in the UK or in Europe. European investors are not. We're not tech. Europe is not tech. I know there are exceptions, and I know people will be shouting at the screen telling me, what about? Yes, there are exceptions. But where is our Tesla? Where is our Amazon? Where is our Microsoft? Where is our Google? Where's our Facebook? Where's our LinkedIn? Where are they? And in AI, where are they? It's not, the United Kingdom is not a tech investing nation. It's just not. And it's just not the profile of an investor here. I know there are hundreds of exceptions to what I'm saying, but generally, even with the breakthrough of AI certainly in the last 5 years at scale, it's still not obvious where the AI opportunity is for the United Kingdom. And I know we're seeing lip service by politicians about AI, but if you look at China and America, they're in a full-out war now to win AI, and they have, it's head-to-head. It's open source and copying versus massive capital investment. I'm not saying capital investment isn't going in China, but, it's an open source copying battle versus a capital battle. My gut feel is the Americans are going to win it, but they're not going to win it easily. They do have the right kind of leaders in the tech industry, giving them the best chance. I'm a huge fan of Jensen Huang, albeit he's Singaporean American with NVIDIA. But if I was putting my money on it, I would say America has the chance to own the AI space. Europe is just a consumer of American and Chinese technology. We're not a nation that builds things. If you look at our big companies, we've got Novo Nordisk selling Ozempic for weight loss. That's our mega success story. Weight loss drugs to fat people around the world. I know it's a mega company. It's worth 200 billion market cap. Fantastic success story. But, it's a weight loss drug for excessive eating. It's not, I don't really hold that up as a mega story, but I know it's a very successful organization. There's, if you look at LVMH, Louis Vuitton Moet Hennessy with Bernard Arnault, it's handbags. We're good at handbags and weight loss drugs, and a few Ferraris. We're not real innovators in Europe. We're not risk takers. Europeans, that's not who we are. We're just not that profile.
I have some ideas on that, but I will take that because that's a separate one that I want to do because, of course, we have as well Spotify and a couple of things. But you're right, in general.
Exceptions to the rule, yeah.
Yeah, there's a couple of exceptions, yeah. So coming back to your career, I wanna go right now to BIP100. So why BIP100? The name. And what is the platform for people that don't know? I know that we want to keep it close and within a network, but nevertheless, it's a fantastic project that I would like to highlight for people listening because that's your biggest project right now.
Yes. So in terms of why, the book is called Business is Bust. and that's BIP.
Yeah.
Penny wrote this in 2018. I was diagnosed with bowel cancer in 2018, and so it wasn't necessarily clear. It was stage 3 bowel cancer. It wasn't necessarily clear whether I was going to make it. I had the bowel cancer removed. I had the intestine removed, and then I had 6 months of chemotherapy, which is brutal. And you never know when you're on chemotherapy whether you're in the Make It Club or the Departure Club. You never know whether you're on the flight home or the flight coming in. But she wrote that book, and in that book, this book contains all our pain and all our hope. But this formed the creation of BIP100 because it's basically the Business's Personal 100 Club. The reason we created it was because we wanted to do another community again in COVID, because our daughter Hannah and Penny worked out that with everyone stuck at home, and when none of us knew how long we were going to be at home, people needed a safe place to talk, where everyone was vetted and qualified. And so you may remember Clubhouse. We were on that Clubhouse, chatting away on Clubhouse, talking, interviews. It was like radio chat all the time, every day. Join another Clubhouse. And so we thought there really needs to be a safe space to talk, and we can't do it for many people. So let's keep the number down to 100 and price it so we can manage and support 100 people. It takes a team of 10 to support 100 members. It's a very personal, intimate service we provide. And so we launched it on Zoom, and we marketed it on Clubhouse. We advertised it on LinkedIn, and I started doing more and more interviews on Zoom, looking for the right people. Never used Zoom before in my life. I never advertised on LinkedIn in my life. Never been on Clubhouse in my life. And just sort of started talking about it, and people started applying, interviewing people. And we started a call on a Monday, and then a call on a Tuesday, and then a couple of calls on a Thursday morning and Thursday evening. And more people started joining, and it was very slow and very gentle, but the right kind of people coming in. They're all mature business owners like us. They'd all been around the block. They're all looking for a safe space where everyone was vetted and they could be themselves and talk through all of their, dare I say, all of their shit, all of their hassle, all of their tough spots. And we wanted to be that safe space. And then when we got the opening up from COVID, from Boris, we can go out and play again, we advertised it on LinkedIn and said, would anybody like to come for lunch and dinner and just talk things through on a personal level about their business? Come and share your business's personal story. Come and share your personal story in business. Come and share your story. And we were completely blown away because 7,500 people registered to come for lunch and dinner in a very short period of time. And we thought, 7,500 people? This must be because everyone's been locked up at home and they're bored and they're sick of Zoom and they want to get out and they need to get out and network and so on. But we were completely blown away. So since then, we've had 2,000 people for lunch and dinner. We've run over 200 lunches and dinners in London and Surrey, and it's been mind-blowing. And from those 2,000 who've come for lunch or dinner, we invited 100 to join the club. And then we focus on supporting those 100 every week, and we still have those 4 calls every week, and we have lunches and dinners every month in London and Surrey to support them and connect them. And it's become a thriving community and a thriving marketplace. It's kind of like a community of friends, a network of experts, and a marketplace of deals. So they can make money, they can find expert suppliers, they can feel safe with a community of friends. We vetted everyone. Penny and I have checked everyone out, and they're all good people. And we keep it small so it's manageable, keep it private so it's safe, and don't let any bad guys in or bad girls in. Just have a very, very safe, intimate, secure experience where you can be yourself. And if you're having success in business, celebrate that with your peers. If you're having a nightmare in business and cash flow is tight, share that as well, and let's talk that through and see if we can find a path through. But it's a group support. It's a group safety. It's a group therapy, and it's also a thriving marketplace. People do lots of business there as well. So it's a microcosm of Academy in a little tiny box with 100 people inside.
And it's very special, and I really like the micro approach to that in the book. And I think, of course, your story about the cancer is really, like you said, business is personal, BIP. It's a fantastic part. So how do you see the vision right now? So, and of course, I still have a couple of questions here. I want to keep the 2 hours if it's okay for you. So Coming back to the BIP, and right now is kind of course, I didn't mention in the beginning, but you as well, an author of a couple of books. And of course, thought leadership is a key element for you. So I'd like to touch on this part, and it's part 4 of this interview. And in terms of your personal experience, and you touched that, you just mentioned in VIP, you can actually decide who comes and who doesn't come. And I know that you told me some stories about the challenge of success online, and as well how this traumatized your family and your life. I would like to touch that area and then go on the more positive as well, the positive parts of the thought leadership, and especially this ecosystem, how you manage this ecosystem. I think one of the challenges, like you mentioned, for young people, and you mentioned that in the beginning, is how do you network? How do you, people that are shy, people that are less shy, how do you actually do it in a positive way and not in all the negative parts that come with it? So I would like to touch that because I know that is one area that you are a master.
Yeah, well, I don't know about a master, but I've certainly studied it a lot. Penny's done a couple of books. I've done 8 books. The kids have now all done books. So, books is it's sort of a power thing that we do books on the journey. In terms of inside the community, when you go networking or you become part of any kind of group or meetup, and you ask people how are they getting on, or what do they do, or what are they focused on, people tend to give you good news answers. And the truth is often not the case. The real truth is people are struggling to find the right suppliers, or struggling to find the right recruits, or struggling to find the right clients, or struggling to raise capital. The truth in most businesses is tough, is harsh. Business is tough. It's really tough business. People want to make it out to be easy. They watch Dragon's Den, or they watch The Apprentice, or they watch some show on TV and make it look easy. Or they've written this book of, here's how I became a billionaire. Read my book. I know how to do it. I think all of that is BS. Business is really tough. It's as tough today as it was 40 years ago when we started out. And I would say it's getting tougher, not easier. It's getting more complex. So you need a safe space to talk things through. You have to be able to find a safe space to say, these are my priorities. My name's Dinis. I've got all these priorities. I'm trying to achieve all these things. I've got all these challenges. This not working. That's not working. I've tried this. That didn't work. This is the support I need. I really need support with. I want to find these suppliers. I want to raise this money. I want to find these recruits. I'm desperate to find these kind of clients or distribution partners or joint venture partners. And the truth is it's really hard to find a place where you can be open and honest and really share. And I'm in a cycling group on a Saturday morning. We all go on our electric bikes, a bunch of old men in their 50s, 60s and 70s, all cycling together on a Saturday morning. And I call it old men group therapy. It's men go out and only share when they trust, and it takes time to trust. And so in BIP100, we wanted to create that place of trust, that place of safety, where if things are not going well, you can talk about the fact things are not going well. These are all the things that are not going well. These are all the things that are going right. And focus on the things that are going right and try and fix the things that are going wrong. But know that whatever you share is not going to be posted on WhatsApp or Twitter, or it's safe. And so there's a real need for psychological safety in groups. Social media and social networking, public social media, WhatsApp, Telegram. These platforms are unsafe. Instagram, they're not safe, these platforms. They're high risk. They're also full of very dangerous people and many criminals, as well as trolls and gangs and much darker subjects I don't need to mention. And so you need a safe space in the same way in a group, either in your family or in your church or your local community or in your library or your school. You've got to have safe spaces. You've got to have safe places where you can express yourself. Talk through your priorities, talk through your challenges, talk about what support you need to get to the next place you're aiming for. And know that it's taken seriously and discussed and debated and talked through. And often in these environments, just talking, just expressing, just saying the things that are wrong is enough. You can figure out the solutions just by saying them to others. You often don't need other people to comment. You often don't need the advice. You don't need the suggestions. You just need the talking therapy and the listening therapy of having a group listening, what I call listening as a service, LAS, as opposed to SaaS, software as a service. But you need the listening, deep listening. And at our lunches, we sit there for 4 hours and we listen. We give everyone a really good listening to. And in that 4 hours, people talk for 5 or 10 minutes about their issues and challenges. And we really listen and see if we can help them get through them and fix them. And so in a 4-hour lunch, you might have 3 hours and 50 minutes of listening and 5 or 10 minutes of talking. And it's the listening where the breakthroughs happen. And through that listening and through that love of another human being, to love them and support them through their pain, through their troubles, that's where real value is developed. And so you can't do that at scale. You can't do intimacy at scale. So that's why we've had to limit it to 100 people, so that we can do it deeply. And, Penny and I work a 50-hour week. She works 50 hours. I work 50 hours. We've got a team of 10. If you think about that, that's hundreds of hours a month to support 100 people. We're probably investing, 4 hours. It's probably 4 hours per week per member to take care of. And so it's an oxymoron to have intimacy at scale. But a lot of people have asked us to license BIP100 New York and BIP100 Paris and BIP100 Sydney and BIP100 San Francisco. And we've had all of these requests for licensing and franchising around the world. But, we're 61, not 31. And we've decided to put our energy into 100 people and really support them through thick and thin, through the good and the bad, the ugly. And it works. But it's not going to be an academy. It's not going to scale to every city in the world. You can only do it on a small scale. In terms of how to network, your question about how to network, it's, there's a lot in Networking for Life, a book I wrote in May 2003 with Paul May. I don't think networking has changed, but in terms of the techniques of how you meet people and connect and ask questions. But what has changed is finding safe places to network. I've been to literally hundreds of conferences and events throughout Asia, the Middle East, the United States, hundreds and hundreds. And it's really hard work networking at conferences and events, but you don't often learn a lot. And so I still think there's no substitute for that. But I like to think when you go out networking now, how do you find a safe group? How do you find a safe space? And I think that's really hard, which is why it's become so hard for the dating industry, for young men and women to find their partners, because it's very hard to find a safe space now. And I think safe spaces are critically important, but they can't be very big. But those are the places to network with those people where everyone's vetted. Very important to have vetting. Very, very important to have vetting so that you've got good people. You can't, one bad apple can ruin a network. One bad apple can ruin a barrel full of apples. And so I think it's very challenging for young people to network now, very challenging, because the online world is... Silicon Valley never delivered the offline, face-to-face, in-person world that Penny and I believe in. And I think, given the choice now after 40 years, what do I prefer, the online networking or the in-person face-to-face? Every time it's the in-person face-to-face, even now. So I'd encourage people to get to as many in-person face-to-face events as they can and find a group that works for them, whether it's an AI club or a social club or a sports club. But find a group that works for them, where there are business people who believe in what they believe in, where they can share their ideas. And if you can't find one, build one.
No, it's very wise words, and thank you so much. It's a masterclass, and I, like you said, just the fact that you have to assume that doing business is difficult, and I think I like your honesty about that, because at the moment there's hundreds of podcasts trying to somehow, or shows and all that stuff, trying to show that, okay, everyone can be an entrepreneur. It's not so easy, to say less. And I think your experience and your success, but as well your just humility to highlight that is a key element. And I love as well I learn a lot with people like you, and it's not really easy, because even being in the UK, and I'm from Portugal and partly French, I would say it's much worse to be an entrepreneur there. Actually, there is a stigma to be an entrepreneur. Actually, you mentioned Europe. On that, I agree. It's a very big stigma. So I know that we are passing time and I want to be respectful, but it's really, I think for people listening to us, there's a lot of learning curves. So from your experience of building one of the first social networks, from working with all these high-profile personalities, you mentioned Dell, you mentioned, of course, the former CEO of Microsoft, and a lot of other personalities. But one of the things I would like to understand and probably to share these last 15 minutes, more or less, that we have is, so as a thought leader, as a tech personality that has been always on the wave, and I think what is impressive is that you've been passing the wave of the internet, the wave of the social media, the wave right now, blockchain and crypto, which you're as well quite involved, and you're still involved. And you wrote actually a book about it, until the wave of AI that we are right now. And as well on the subject, you've been always networking with a lot of entrepreneurs. You met hundreds of business, thousands of people. So, and you mentioned as well the importance of choosing very well, because of course the internet can be very toxic. And of course, AI, unfortunately, and the world is a bit more divided in other ways. But there's a lot of wonderful things we forget. So from the legacy, and I would say that this is probably with part 5 between thought leadership 4 and 5, thought leadership, legacy, mentorship. How do you see this from your experience? And you're still quite young for the standards of our kind of international standards of entrepreneurship. How do you see this kind of, especially crossover between the highlights of your career, probably some of the things that you thought were more challenging, and you touched some of them, of your health and the challenge. But I would like to touch more on this from working with all these people. What were the things that really drive you to continue pushing forward, and as well to push all the things with BIP and with your wife, and taking all these different things that are really the part of your success?
Wow. Very fascinating. A very fascinating question, Dinesh. Very, very good question. I mean, I'll start with the highlights. I learned tremendous things from Alan Sugar, Lord Sugar, from Michael Dell, Steve Ballmer, the whole Microsoft team of phenomenal people. David, Sean, Neil. I mean, I know hundreds of people at Microsoft. I've worked with a lot of very successful entrepreneurs in New Zealand and Australia and the United States. I guess the highlights are that people can say one word or one sentence and it can impact the rest of your life. So I'd say that's a highlight for me. Like Tony Code, 1987, all roads lead to database. One sentence, which I've never forgotten in 38 years. One sentence. And, you know, Steve Jobs in his Stanford speech, 2005, stay hungry, stay foolish. You know, Steve Ballmer with his opportunity maps. These are opportunity maps, Thomas. These are opportunity. We're going to reuse these as opportunity maps at Microsoft. I think highlights is a good word, a good choice of word, because you're trying to lead back to your question about the drive. The drive for me comes from a desire to be seen, to be considered, to be validated, to be significant in other people's lives, to make a contribution to other people's lives. We know from Tony Robbins, the 6 human needs, the need for connection, the need for significance, the need to be validated. These are critical needs that I have, like many other people have. You know, to make a contribution, to be seen to be making a contribution, to be seen to be significant, to be seen to making connections. This is the power, this is the driving force that pushes me along. I have as much energy now as I did 40 years ago. I've got as much desire now as I did 40 years ago. But the desire to do it is raging inside me to achieve that connection, that contribution, that significance, that validation. So that's the driving force, that what Napoleon Hill calls in Think and Grow Rich, the burning desire. I still have the burning desire, and I've pushed that burning desire into Hannah Ross and TJ, and I pushed it into Jay Shetty. There was a lot in there as well, but I really set the fire alight in him. And I think that's one really big highlight. You have to identify inside you. You have that burning desire inside you, Dinis. You know, you push hard, you work hard, you keep going, you're relentless, you go. It's one of the things about you that really appeals to me. Finding that burning desire inside yourself, believing in your own ideas, trusting in your own ideas. You have to believe in your own ideas. You have to trust your own ideas, and you have to go out there and get them, make them work and do them. until you find the ones that do work and don't work. You have to believe in yourself. You have to chase what you desire and you believe in for things to really happen. In terms of this desire to push forward, when you've had bowel cancer and you're nearly out, and you nearly go into the departure lounge, every day after 2018 is a bonus. So every extra day is a bonus. So I'm not going to sit around and play golf. I'm not going to sit around and play tennis. I'm going to keep pushing forward and keep pushing day in, day out, keep pushing. I do my cycling. I do my running. I do my walking. I do my paddle tennis. I do have breaks. I do like to have my breaks. I know how important it is to have holidays and breaks and get some sun. But there's still that driving force inside me to keep pushing and keep pushing and keep learning. And the wonderful thing about technology, just when you've learned SaaS or cloud, along comes blockchain or Bitcoin or Ethereum or Solana, and then comes AI, and then comes Claude and ChatGPT, and the technology industry just keeps coming and keeps coming and keeps coming. And you can never get enough of the technology industry. It's like a dopamine addiction. It just keeps coming and keeps coming. And just when you think you've learned it, here comes something else. And that's tremendously stimulating. And being in the tech industry for 40 years, it's like being at university all the time. And you're constantly doing an undergraduate degree all of the time. Occasionally you get to a master's level. Occasionally you might reach PhD level in a certain subject. But then it will be thrown away, dismissed. The market will chuck it, and we'll be onto something else. We saw that with social networking. We saw it with social media. Then we saw it with cloud. Then we saw it with SaaS. All those things are old-fashioned. Blockchain is old-fashioned. Bitcoin is old-fashioned. Ethereum is old-fashioned. It's all about AI and drones and IoT. And that tremendous excitement of the tech industry has held my attention for 45 years. I'm addicted to the tech industry, the learning, the networking, the career development, the connecting people, the supporting people. It to me, it has no end. So if I collapse on stage making a speech, or I collapse at a lunch or a dinner networking, I'll be happy with it. I'm happy to go down to the ground doing what I love, and networking, connecting, supporting people. But I will keep going until the clock goes off, and hopefully my 3 little ones will pick up the baton straight from my hand and press on.
Wow, that's very inspiring, and I subscribe in as well from my side. So thank you so much for this word. So in the scope of the last questions, and these are actually questions that I think you proposed, and I love it. Although there's a big one that I probably will leave it for a next episode. I really want to do a take 2. I know that is a big one, but let's go. So I will keep a rapid fire, and I'll leave the big one about AI for a next episode. So first question, who's been your greatest influence? And this is rapid fire.
Oh, my greatest influence has to be my wife, Penny. I mean, I've had many, but yeah, I mean, Peter Allen at the agency was huge for me. Alan Sugar, Mike Raybone, Marcus Hodgkinson, Michael Dell, Sean Orplan, Neil Holloway, Terry Smith. There'll be at least 100 names there if I dig, who've been huge influences for me. Adrian Grant, Mark Estelle, Paul Reynolds. A huge number of people have supported me, helped me, guided me, mentored me, pointed me, connected me. Yeah, a lot of great people. And yourself included in this. I think you've been very significant to me.
No, Thomas, it's an honor. Second, what book or thinker changed the way you see the world?
Oh, it has to be Napoleon Hill, Think and Grow Rich. No doubt about it. 1937, Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. No doubt about it. The biggest influence on my life, yeah.
What daily habit powers your productivity?
Probably preparation. I spend a lot of time walking and cycling and running. So without those in place, I get out of bed and do those things for a couple of hours before I do any work. So I couldn't be as productive as I am without that initial exercise setup.
That is very important. What advice would you give to your 25-year-old self?
Oh boy, 25, 1989. Keep pushing, man. Keep pushing. Just keep pushing.
So, and the last one, and I think this is coming from you, but I want to make it a bit more personal. I like it. Is you wrote BIP, business is part, or your wife wrote business is personal. But as someone that has been on the present, on the past, on the future, what do you say the future of business is?
Future of business. I think the future of business is mass automation at scale. I can see multi-billion-dollar companies run by one person. That's the future of business. Massive automation. On the other hand, I see a great shift to private groups and intimacy, small intimate groups and private marketplaces all over the world, in every town and city in the world. So I still sort of see big mass automation and lots and lots of small intimate groups is what I sense. And obviously by mass automation, I also mean robots walking the street, cleaning the streets, driving the cars, cooking your food, loading your dishwasher. There are going to be billions of robots. That's terrifying, but there are going to be billions of robots. Business, we've got to figure out how to deal with leisure. Leisure is a challenge, I think.
Yeah, that's you open another big thing, but I want to be respectful of your time because it's 2 hours. I have much more questions, but Thomas, has been a pleasure and as well an honor. I wanted to do this for a long time. For people listening to us, I have always say, I'm a huge fan of your work, your wife, and as well, not just your work, but your ethics. Having the ethics, I think that's what I love. I start saying that your humanity, your as well hardworking but smart working and networking capacities come with a fantastic humanity. And I know that you pay sometimes the price for that, but you as well achieved a global recognition on that. So for people listening to us, we're going to put all the links from the website of thomaspower.net that you can actually see. And Thomas is very present, especially on X, in a lot of different social networks like LinkedIn. As well, BIP, of course, we'll put all the links. I know that is very restricted, but I'm sure Thomas will open doors for some few ones. And well, Thomas, has been an honor and a pleasure, and I keep learning with you. Thank you for being here.